Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us.
Yeah, always fun to dig into these sayings we use all the time.
Right, and today we are looking at better late than never,
Oh, yeah, familiar one for sure.
definitely. And we found this excerpt from a paper called Better Late Than Never, Meaning, Origin, and Misuse.
Okay.
It really gets into some interesting stuff. Like,
Yeah.
have you ever actually, stopped and thought about what that phrase really means?
Hmm. Yeah, not really. I guess it just means it's better to get something done even if it's late.
Right, exactly. And sometimes it feels like a good excuse.
Ah, yeah, I see what you mean.
So today we're going to get into that, like when is it really true and when is it just an excuse?
Okay, cool. I'm intrigued.
Me too. So let's start with the basics, right? Like what does this phrase actually mean?
I mean, at its core, it is about recognizing that something is still valuable even if it's delayed.
Right. Like it's better to finally do something than to just never do it at all.
Exactly. And it also sort of implies this idea that, things don't always go perfectly. Life throws curveballs and sometimes delays happen.
Yeah.
But that shouldn't completely derail us from taking action.
Okay. So it's like an encouragement to be persistent
I think so, yeah.
and maybe a little more flexible with our timelines.
Yeah, interesting way to put it.
Okay. So I have a question about the history of this saying.
Go for it.
Where did it even come from? Like, was it some ancient proverb or something?
Well, that's the thing. The exact origin is actually kind of murky.
Really?
Yeah, but the idea itself has been around for ages. Like, you can find similar sentiments going all the way back to ancient philosophers.
Oh, wow. So the Greeks and Romans were talking about this too.
Yeah, they emphasize the importance of action even if it's delayed.
So it's like a universal human experience.
I think so, yeah. We all face that dilemma of wanting to do something, but maybe procrastinating or facing obstacles.
And then eventually getting around to it.
Exactly.
Okay, so this isn't just some modern saying we came up with.
No, definitely not. And in fact, there's even a mention of a similar idea in Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Wow, seriously.
Yeah, and that was written in the 14th century.
Okay, so this is way older than I ever imagined.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to think about how this phrase has been resonating with people for centuries.
Okay, so we know it's old. We kind of have a sense of what it means. But when is it actually okay to use this phrase? What are some real life examples?
So the paper gives a couple of good examples.
Okay.
Imagine someone finally deciding to start taking care of their health.
Okay.
Let's say they're in their 50s and they've never really exercised regularly.
Yeah.
They realize it's important, so they start going for walks every day.
Okay, so in that case, it really is better late than never to adopt a healthier lifestyle.
Right. They're still reaping the benefits, even though they're starting later in life.
Right, that makes sense. Are there other examples where it's totally appropriate to use?
Oh, for sure. Think about a company that's been developing a new software update.
Okay.
They've been working on it for months, and it's been delayed and delayed.
Happens all the time. Right, but when they finally release it, even if it's later than they initially planned, it's still progress.
Yeah. So the key here is that even if something is delayed, it can still hold a lot of value.
Absolutely.
Okay. But I have a feeling this is where we start getting into the tricky territory.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing.
Because there are definitely times when better late than never feels like a cop-out.
Yeah, for sure. It's not always the right thing to say.
Right. And that's where misuse comes in, right?
Exactly. The paper actually talks about 3 main ways people tend to misinterpret this saying.
3. Okay, I'm ready to hear all about this misuse laid on me.
Okay, so let's start with a classic example.
All right.
Think about someone you know who is chronically late for everything.
Oh, God, I know exactly who you're talking about.
They're always late for meetings, deadlines, even social events.
Oh, yeah.
And their go-to excuse is better late than never.
It's like their motto.
Right. But in those situations, it starts to feel less like a genuine belief and more like a way to avoid taking responsibility. They're using it as a shield to deflect any criticism or consequences.
Yes, they're not actually acknowledging the impact of their lateness on other people.
Exactly, and I think that's a key point, right?
Yeah.
Better late than never isn't meant to be a free pass for being irresponsible or disrespectful of other people's time.
So it's not just about showing up eventually.
Right, it's about understanding that time has value.
Right, and that our actions or inactions can have consequences for others.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's one way it gets misused. What's another?
Well, another important point is that it doesn't apply when timing is absolutely critical.
Okay, I can see that.
Imagine you miss a crucial job interview because you slept in.
Oof. Yeah, it's not going to go well.
Or you miss a flight because you got stuck in traffic.
Yeah, in those situations, being on time is kind of the whole point.
Right. There are some situations where being late completely undermines the purpose of the action.
And no amount of better late than never is going to fix that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so context definitely matters.
It does.
It's not a universal excuse for every situation.
Right.
Right, hit me with the third way this phrase gets misused.
Okay, this one's interesting. It has to do with quality.
Ah, I was thinking that might come up.
Sometimes people try to use better late than never to justify turning in shoddy or rushed work.
Like as if the effort of just getting it done makes up for the fact that it's not good.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the phrase implies that the delayed action still has merit. It's not just about checking a box.
So just because you managed to submit something
Right.
doesn't mean it's actually better than not having done it at all.
I think that's a really good distinction.
Yeah, quality matters.
It does.
So if you're sacrificing quality just to meet a deadline, it might not actually be better late than never. It might just be bad.
I think that's a great point.
Okay, so you've made me really think about all the times I've probably used better late than never without really considering what it means.
Yeah, it's a phrase we throw around a lot.
So can you give us some guidelines for using this phrase correctly?
Absolutely. So the paper lays out some pretty clear guidelines.
Okay, good, because I need some clarity here.
Yeah, so first off, think about the value of the action.
Okay.
Like, is it something that still matters even though it's late?
Yeah, that makes sense.
For example, sending a birthday gift a week late.
Yeah.
Probably still appreciated, right?
Yeah.
Most likely. But filing your taxes months after the deadline.
Ooh, yeah, not so much.
Yeah, you're probably going to be hit with some hefty late fees.
Right, so those late fees might outweigh the whole better late than never thing.
Exactly.
Okay, so context matters.
Absolutely.
It's not just about whether you did the thing, but about the consequences of the delay.
Right, and that's where things get really interesting.
Oh, how so?
The paper goes into the psychology of using this phrase
Okay.
and how it can actually reveal some underlying issues.
Like what kind of issues?
Well, for instance, if you're constantly using better late than never to justify missing deadlines or breaking commitments, it could be a sign that you're struggling with time management.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or maybe you're overcommitting yourself.
Right.
Or, and this is something the paper really emphasized, it could be a way to avoid taking responsibility.
I see what you mean. Like it becomes a defense mechanism.
Exactly. You're using it as a shield to protect yourself from facing the consequences of your actions.
So it's not about genuinely believing that it's better to be late. It's about avoiding accountability.
Right, and I think in those cases, better late than never loses its positive connotation.
Yeah, it becomes more about self-preservation than anything else.
Exactly.
Okay, so how can we use this phrase in a way that's both genuine and responsible?
I think the key is to pair it with accountability.
Okay, I like that.
Instead of just throwing out a better late than never,
Yeah.
acknowledge the delay and take ownership of it.
Oh, so it's about being mindful of the message you're sending.
Right.
Give me an example of how to do that effectively.
Sure, imagine you're turning in a project late.
Okay.
Instead of just saying better late than never. You could say, I apologize for the delay. I know this has impacted the team, but I wanted to make sure I got it right.
Oh, wow. That feels so much more sincere.
Right.
You're not just dismissing the lateness, but acknowledging its impact.
Exactly. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier.
About taking responsibility.
Exactly. Better late than never can be a positive sentiment.
Yeah.
But only if it's used thoughtfully and genuinely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've gone beyond the surface meaning of better late than never, explored its history, and really dug into the psychology of how we use this phrase.
Yeah, it's fascinating how much depth there is to such a common saying.
I know, right? And it's making me think about all the other phrases we use without really thinking about them.
Oh, absolutely. Language is so powerful.
Yeah.
And I think this deep dive has really highlighted how even simple phrases can reveal a lot about our values and our thought patterns.
Absolutely. It's not just about what we say, but why we say it. And I think understanding the nuances of better late than never can help us make more conscious choices.
Yes, I agree.
About how we approach our commitments, our goals, and even our relationship with time itself.
I think that's a really important point.
It is.
And it's something I hope our listeners will take away from this conversation.
Me too. But you know what else this is making me think about?
What's that?
We've been focusing on when it's better to do something late.
Right.
But what about those times when it's actually more beneficial to just let go of a commitment or a goal altogether?
That's a really interesting question.
Right, like we often feel this pressure to do all the things, achieve all the milestones,
Yeah,
even when it's no longer serving us or bringing us joy.
that's so true.
And that pressure can sometimes keep us stuck in a cycle of chasing goals that are no longer aligned with our values or priorities.
You're absolutely right.
So how do we know when to say better late than never and when to just say never?
I think that's where self-reflection comes in. We need to be honest with ourselves about why we're holding on to something.
Okay.
Is it because it truly matters to us, or is it because of fear, obligation, or societal pressure?
Right, those external pressures can be so strong.
They can.
And maybe letting go can open up space for something even more fulfilling to enter our lives.
I love that reframing.
So instead of just defaulting to better late than never, we should be asking ourselves, is this still serving me? Does this still align with my values and goals?
I think those are excellent
And
questions.
if the answer is no, then maybe never is actually the more empowering choice.
I think that's a really powerful takeaway from this deep dive.
Yeah, it is.
Better late than never can be a great motivator, but sometimes choosing never can be the ultimate act of self-care and liberation.
It's amazing, right? We started with this simple saying,
Yeah.
and we ended up talking about like self-care and liberation.
It's true though, isn't it?
It is, and it really shows you how powerful language can be.
I think so too. Even a small phrase like better late than never. It can have all these different layers of meaning.
And it can reveal so much about how we think and how we approach the world.
Absolutely.
So to everyone listening out there, the next time you hear or use this phrase, take a second to think about it.
Yeah,
Don't just throw it around mindlessly.
good advice.
Ask yourself, is this really true in this situation?
Yeah. Am I using it as an excuse, or am I really trying to make things right?
And maybe even consider the power of never.
Right. Sometimes it's okay to let go.
Exactly. Well, this has been another fascinating deep dive.
It has. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. And I hope everyone listening has learned something new today about this common saying.
Yeah, me too.
And as always, keep exploring, keep questioning,
Yeah.
and keep diving deep into the world of language and ideas.
Until next time.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.